much. So again, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. And again, as usual, we will start with a short breathing exercise followed by motivations. Then we can think, may us coming here together become cause and condition to actualize shamatha and special insight within our mind stream. And having actualized the unity of the shamatha and special insight, and supported by the bodhicitta mind, may we be able to eliminate all the obscurations, not only the obscuration of defilements, but even the subtle obscurations of the knowledge. Thereby achieving buddhahood, fully enlightened state for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, so to the founder, the endowed
transcendent destroyer,
the one gone beyond the four destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the complete and fully awakened one, the endowed and standard destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout, homage to all worthy with respect, bowing with bodies as many as all rams, Adams, in all aspects, with the supreme faith, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous action, perform only perfect virtuous action, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of Buddha, a star, a visual application, a flame of lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see condition, things as such. Through this merit, may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from samsara's oceans, perturbed by the wave of aging, sickness, and death. I prostrate to the Aryati of Zen. Thus did I hear one time that Bhagavan was dwelling on the mass of Vulture Mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan observed in the concentration on categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the bodhisattva, mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregate also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wish to practice the activities of profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wish to practice the activities of profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this correctly and repeatedly, beholding those 5 aggregate also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness form, emptiness not other than form is not also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like all phenomena, are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not division, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factor, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance, so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattva rely on dual imperfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in 3 times also manifestly completely awakened, unsurprised for perfect, complete enlightenment in the of perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurprised mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that truly faces away all suffering, should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is declared Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva master, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration, commented Bodhisattva Master Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as we have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharititi-Putra, the Bodhisattva Master Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding the entirety, along with the world of the gods, humans, Asura, Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Sashi Peke Chonshe Meto Tare Rale She Nide Gembade Sangye Shintu Mide Owai Dogun Namada Shinla Je Sho Yedam Kurana Mandala Hani Ataya Mi. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to relation to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodan Roke Sonam La Changju Bado Dane Gathas Dagi Shoshegi Be Sonamgi Tola Penche Sangye Goba Sangye Chodan Roke Sonam La Changju Bado Dane Gathas Dagi Shoshegi Be Sonamgi Tola Penche Sangye Goba. So, so last week we kind of completed in the point where the measurement of having actualized the special insight. And in that, normally, in generally speaking, as Lama Tsongkhapa explained, when you are trying to develop single-pointed concentrations, if you analyze, then it becomes obstacles. Obstacle for the stability and the concentration. But if you have already achieved shamatha, and on the basis of that shamatha, if you do analysis in order to cultivate the special insight, and through that kind of the shamatha that you develop the wisdom, realizing the emptiness, through that kind of analysis, does not become obstacle the stability of shamatha, but instead it even bring even more powerful concentrations. Even more powerful concentration, it doesn't become an obstacle, but actually it become a cause for even more stronger concentrations or shamatha. So therefore, we have to be able to differentiate those two things. Okay. So today we continue from where we have left. So it is in terms of the PDF, is 288 page number, and it is an explanation of how shamatha and special insight are united, how to practice in united, or what. So when do we achieve the unite of the shamatha and special insight? So here Lama Tsongkhapa says, in order to, when you say unite, we are talking about two objects, okay? Something to be united, we are talking about two objects. So here, and so therefore, in order to unite, you need to actualize or achieve both of those objects. So here, one must have achieved already the shamatha and special insight in order to them to be united. Okay. So therefore, if you have not achieved one of them, then you cannot talk about the uniting of them. So therefore, one has to achieve shamatha as it explained already, and one must have through the meditative concentration, and then one need to achieve also the special insight as explained previously through the analysis on the basis of having achieved the shamatha. And so then, and in order for them to be union, then both must have been achieved. So that is, so when the moment on the moment special insight is achieved for the first time, okay, as mentioned, as we went through last week, as is mentioned, then that from that moment, that the union of shamatha and special insight have been achieved. The moment you achieve the special insight for the first time, because you already have the shamatha, and then on the basis of that, you try to develop the special insight, and the very moment you achieve the special insight, from that moment, then the union has been developed. The union of shamatha and special insight has been developed. So as he says, by depending on the shamatha, which you have already actualized before, on the basis of that, through the analysis, the power of analytical meditations, then you have the realization on emptiness, and emptiness, and without any effort, without applying any effort, when you are able to have the realizations of emptiness, without any kind of effort, effortlessly, naturally, and then that is when one has achieved the union of shamatha and the special insight. So then, in that, there are a few different sources of in relation to that, in Asanga Sarvaga levels, again, it talk about, when do we know the special insight and shamatha are mixed or united evenly, or enter the union, different word, what it means, the mixed of being those two, or entering in the union or united, they all have same meaning, but even though it's different terms that it might be used, but here, and so I don't think probably I need to read it, basically, it says, in terms of the stages of meditations, you go through 9 stages of meditations, which we already discussed before when we discussed about shamatha, 9 stages of meditations. After the 9 stages, after you reach the 9th stage, the 9th stage of meditation is still not the shamatha. Still, even though you can place your mind effortlessly without any kind of obstacle of distractions or laxity for hours and maybe even days. But still, until you achieve plenty and the blissful from the plenty, you have not achieved shamatha. So on the basis of that 9th stage of meditation, then you develop a small the physical and mental and physical plenty, and through that plenty, then you develop blissfulness. And when you come that, then you achieve the shamatha, and then you use that shamatha as the foundations or as the basis to do the analysis to the nature of emptiness. And through that, when you do the analysis, that analysis lead you to have a stronger even concentrations, very strong concentrations. And that through that strong concentration, then you have realization of emptiness. Not only you have realization of emptiness, but then you develop a special, bliss, just like you develop bliss in the shamatha. Also, you develop a plenty, and from plenty, the blissfulness, the bliss from the physical plenty and mental bliss and natural. Then that is when you have, that is when then you have achieved the special insight. That is when the union of shamatha and special insights achieved. That is when the shamatha and special insight have been mixed. That is when shamatha and special insight is united evenly. So that is that it says. And similarly, in Kamala Shila stages of meditation 3, it's again the same thing. Same thing. First, you develop the shamatha by overcoming the 2 obstacles, laxity and distractions. And having overcome those main obstacle, which main obstacle develop the shamatha, that is the laxity and distractions, then you achieve the shamatha. And having achieved the shamatha, again, you use that shamatha to analyze in the nature of the emptiness, nature of the phenomena, the emptiness, suchness, And again, when you analyze this, also you try to overcome both distraction and laxity while you are analyzing, the nature of the emptiness or nature of the phenomena. And then by having overcome that, then at the very beginning, you might have to put a little bit effort. And then slowly, without effort, you are able to, analyze the nature of the phenomena or emptiness, naturally, and without under the influence of any of the distraction laxity. And then in that point, you try to apply equanimity, just as like we apply equanimity when you are trying to develop concentration at the 9 stages, not applying any kind of antidote, anything. And so you try to cultivate that equanimity and trying to have relax, and without any effort, you try to give up every effort. And that time, then that is when you develop the special insight. And at that point, when you develop that special insight for the first time, then at that time you have developed the union of, actualized the union of shamatha and special insight. So again, similar from the Kamala Shila, and some from the instruction perfection of wisdom, again, is same, and then So again, here, when you observe very image, connected to conceptualization, because you use reasoning and logic, so that it is connected with conceptions, because you use reasoning and logics, and then when you experience both of them in your mind through the continuum of uninterrupted and abstraction, and that is called the path when you union of the shamatha and special insight. So again, according to that, Lama Tsongkhapa trying to explain the meaning of when they say when you experience both and continuum of uninterrupted and unobstructed attention. So three meanings, then Lama Tsongkhapa try to explain those three meaning of those three words, meaning of that, unobstructed here when it says that, that continue uninterrupted and unobstructed attention. So what does unobstructed means, here it says you don't have to stop in order to achieve, non-conception state of mind. To reach that non-conceptual state of mind, you don't have to stop the analysis, the analytical meditations, because as we went through last year, the very special insight from that analytical meditation, it induces non-conceptual. Unlike other times, in ordinary, when we have not already developed shamatha, if we do analysis, then it bring more conceptions. It cannot induce non-conceptual state. Do you get it? We already discussed. But when you have already achieved shamatha, on the basis of that shamatha, then when you use analytical meditations, then it doesn't become, it leads to non-conceptual, it can induce or it lead to non-conceptual state, and therefore you don't have to stop the analytical meditation in order to reach to the point of non-conceptual state. Do you get it? And so that is what it means, unobstructed. Yes? Yes, Bob?
So, I mean, it seems to be saying then that you can hold simultaneously both a conceptual and non-conceptual image at the same time. Am I understanding that correctly? Because it seems like if you're still analyzing conceptually while you've induced a non-conceptual mind, it sounds sort of like you have both simultaneously.
To me, it seems like, of course, the point is that we want to reach to a non-conceptual state. To reach to non-conceptual state, you don't have to stop the conceptual thought, the analytical. So the analytical is not an obstruction and obstacles to develop non-conceptual state.
But at that point then, okay, so it's not an obstacle, but at that point where you induce the non-conceptual state of mind, at that point, does your conceptual state of mind stop then? And you're left with only a single non-conceptual point of view? Is that what happens? So the conceptual induces it, but then the conceptual stops and you carry on with just a non-conceptual? Is that the correct understanding?
Of course, when we reach to the direct realization of emptiness, definitely that conceptual stops. But even before that, even when you are on the path of preparation, for example, when you don't have direct realization of emptiness, but still in that, the awareness of special insight, the wisdom, the awareness that perceive that emptiness is not doing any kind, after you do the analysis at the very beginning, and then you reach a point when you come to the conclusion of that analysis, and then that point, you have just awareness or realization that emptiness, which is actually conception. It's the mind itself conceptions, but you are not using conception kind of reasoning and logic at that point, in that moment.
But if that's true, then that conclusion is a conceptual thought. So you are simultaneously holding that conclusion or conceptual thought in your mind at the same time that you have a single-pointed, non-conceptual understanding. I mean, it sounds very confusing because it sounds like you have both.
You know, again, even when this could mean two different things, okay? One thing is when you say non-conceptual state here, it means that you are able to be aware of the emptiness after analysis, or you are able to realize, and once you have awareness, you are able to stay in that awareness without any more reasoning, logic, using any kind of concept, okay? So you can reach that point, one of that. In that cases, then definitely, of course, the mind which is aware of that or the realizations of emptiness at that point is still conceptual thought. But it is, when it says non-conceptuality, it doesn't mean that it's not a conceptual thought, but what it means is that you are not using reasoning and logic anymore, but you are actually being in that awareness itself.
So what you're saying is that you're holding single-pointedly that conceptual thought with no more additional reasoning.
Yeah, I think there is one way of understanding that, you know, of that, or meaning of that. And then secondly is, you know, as it is explained last week, you know, non-conceptual awareness, the wisdom realizing emptiness directly, you know, that is not conceptual. And to reach, because the conceptual, that kind of analytical meditation lead to non-conceptual, induced to that non-conceptual direct realization, emptiness. And so therefore the analytical meditations is not an obstacle to that, but actually it induced that.
Yeah, so what you seem to be saying is you seem to be saying that when you hit this union, a special insight and calm abiding, at that point, your mind is still conceptual, but it's single-pointedly. And then at some point, when you have a direct realization of emptiness, that conceptuality disappears and you have a direct seeing.
Yes.
It's non-conceptual.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. So.
I think Stephen has a question too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to support you on that, Bob. It says just a little bit later in the text, the next section, through the continuum should be understood from the point of view that the analytical special insight and the shamatha at the end of analysis do not arise simultaneously. So they arise in sequence. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Yeah, there is a letter, they arise in sequence at the same time. Once you have the special insight, then there is both of them simultaneously. So that is the difference. When you actually actualize at the very beginning, it comes through the sequences. But once you have developed shamatha, and through that, then when you have through analysis, special insight, once you have realized, then at that time there is simultaneously both the special insight and the shamatha, because shamatha has not been degenerated. It is still there. So there it is simultaneously at that. So yeah. And then experiencing both is experienced both by the shamatha, that of the non-conceptual image, and special insight, that of the image connected with the conceptualizations. So it is the object of the both shamatha and the special insight. So both here referring that. And then, yeah, through the continuum, that is where I think now where Stephen saying, mean the point should be understood from the point of view that analytic insight and samatha at the end of analysis do not arise simultaneously. However, when there is actually samatha induced by the power of analysis, so through the samatha, by the power of analysis, which is special insight, both the special insight, discerning phenomena that observe the mode, and samatha, concentration that firmly and single-pointedly abide on the mode, operate in associations. So at that time, both of them are there simultaneously, and so. And then next one, I'm a little bit kind of not 100% sure. It's a little bit where it says, for that, it is necessary to gain realizations arising from the meditations, and the special insight is the realization from the meditations. Okay. Like, for example, you can have, okay, maybe not go there. So special insight is the realization arising from the meditation. Therefore, collection of two, that allow one to, so collection of two, the stability and to be able to use the reasoning, both of them. Collection of two that allow one to individually analyze the meaning of selflessness from within non-conceptual state of firm stability, Here, I think sometime, sometimes the word that conceptual and non-conceptual can be very mistaken, the way it is used. In Tibetan, mitokpa, tokpa means conceptuals. It can mean other meaning as others, but tokpa is the conceptions, and mitokpa, negative, is a non-conceptual. Okay, but sometimes that mitokpa doesn't mean that mind is not a conceptual mind. It just means you are not using, investigating, analyzing. So that is sometimes, I think here, that is what it means. I think confusion is, non-conceptual doesn't mean that the mind itself is not a conceptual, it is a direct realizations. It doesn't mean that, because non-conceptual can have different meanings. Sometimes non-conceptual mind means direct realization, direct mind, which is not conceptual mind. But sometimes non-conceptual means it is still conceptual mind, but you are not doing any kind of analysis. You just try to single-pointedly concentrate it in the objects. Yes, Bob?
I mean, as I understand it, a conceptual mind involves some sort of thought or conceptual image. And so what you're saying is that conceptual image can be present, meaning you have a conceptual mind, but you may be just holding that single-pointedly so that you're not actually analyzing that image, is what you seem to be saying.
Yeah, concentration itself. When we do the concentration itself, in generally, is a conceptual thought, a mind. So when your concentration is holding, objects, then even though it is a conceptual mind, but because you are not doing any analysis, single-pointedly holding that, so sometimes that can be known as a non-conceptual. The way we use the terms, so sometimes the way you use the term can be, again, sometimes a little bit kind of confusing, because sometimes it could mean different meaning in different contexts.
So maybe here it's by saying non-conceptual, you mean it's just single-pointed mind.
Yeah, I think that is what it means, because here we are still talking about when you are trying to cultivate the special insight at the first time, when the union comes. At that time, you haven't have direct realizations. And so when we talk about non-conceptual here in this point, we are not talking about like the direct realizations. So therefore, is talking more about your mind being single pointed and not analyzing. So that is what it, within non-conceptual state of firm stability, so that is what the shamatha, like the shamatha itself, and so then the example given is, a fish kind of what you call swimming, moving into the water without disturbing the water. You can see the fish kind of swimming or moving in, but it doesn't disturb the stillness of the water. It doesn't disturb the stillness of water. And the same way, even you are doing analysis. So the analytical meditation like the fish, okay? So like just fish moving, even though you are doing analytical, but you are not disturbing, that kind of analysis is not disturbing the stillness of that concentration, stillness of that shamatha, just like the water of the shamatha, the stillness. And then here, that one says, still may be posited as similitude of shamatha and special insight. And it is not the meaning of actually union of special and special shamatha and special insight. So here, I'm kind of a little bit confused why it is not actual shamatha union, and it is a similitude. Unless when you talk about non-conscious state of firm stability, maybe it's not talking, if you have not still, even you have not achieved shamatha, but you still have a very strong concentrations. On the basis of that, if you do that, then of course it is not a union. But if it is shamatha has achieved, yes, Bob?
I think what you were saying earlier is that when you have this union of calm abiding and special insight, your mind is no longer analyzing, but is single pointed. And I think the little fish swimming around would imply sort of analyzing continuing. So maybe that's why they say it's a similitude, because if your mind is still actually doing some kind of analyzing process, you don't have the union, but your mind has to be single pointed to have the union, is what it seemed to me you were saying earlier.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that does make some sense. Yeah.
I think Lorraine has a question.
Yes, Liz.
Yes, in my experience, I'm actually not really confused about it at all. I reached a level of focus unexpectedly where there were no concepts to be had. Everything was just as it is, and I was just as I was. There was nothing to conceptualize and nothing to understand. I was just in a place where my focus was just, it's the whole concept of emptiness is form and form is emptiness. The forms are there, the emptiness is there, and that's all it is. And it's really hard to put that into English terms, into any kind of words at all. I think it's something that really needs to be experienced when you're just suddenly in that place where things just are and things are empty.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your experience. And here again, Lama Tsongkhapa making clear, when we try to understand in manner what the union of the shamatha and special insight is, we have to really rely on authentic texts, because there are many different explanations of what that means, the union of what is the meaning of union of shamatha, or that by different practitioners, by different masters, and that. And so if there's a different experience of different peoples, when they experience the union of that, and if different practitioners have different experience, so how do we know whose experience is more authentic than other one's experience? Because they have different experience of union of that, where they feel they had the union of the special insight, and so therefore to kind of really understand which one's authentic, then we have to rely on authentic scriptures by those great Indian masters, and earlier, so that you, and so I think that is another, I think, important point Lama Tsongkhapa is making here. Even at the time of the Lama Tsongkhapa's time, there were different experience, different practitioner sharing different experiences, what the union of that is. And so then you can get confused. So if we try to rely on some of those authentic sources to understand that, then that will be more safe to say. So then I think now, is coming to the conclusion, summary of the topic of general path, okay, and general procedures. So Lama Tsongkhapa now trying to kind of summarize a whole lamrim, the whole path, the whole lamrim that has been discussed, summarized very briefly. So here he says, the root of the path, rests on relying correctly and properly on qualified spiritual gurus or teachers. And therefore we should have clear and decisive about that. And so, because it's so important, relying on the spiritual masters is the very root of the realizations, very root of the path. Therefore, we have to be very clear and decisive. What is the qualifications of spiritual master, qualified spiritual master is? How to find the spiritual masters? Once we find authentic, qualified spiritual master, how to rely it properly, how to rely it properly through the thought and actions. So all we have to be very clear and decisive, because once you make mistake there, you make the mistake like in a highway. If you turn one mistake in one exit, then you might have to, you cannot turn it easily. You might have to go many hours before you can come and turn and go back. And once you make the mistake the very beginning, then you make a huge mistake. And so therefore we have to be very clear and decisive on that, really, because that is the very beginning of the path, root of the path. So that is where then natural, spontaneous or uncontrived desire to take the essence of your freedom will arise or is arising. And once you have that, it will urge you to practice from within. Once you have that kind of, you have a strong wish to, make your, once you have strong wish to make your life meaningful, once you have strong wish, spontaneous or very, without pushing yourself, without putting so much effort, when you have a strong wish to make your life meaning and take essence from the life, then to practice. Nobody has to push you to practice. The wish to practice the Dharma will come within yourself easily. No one has to push you or force you to practice. At the moment, we have to be forced, we have to be reminded all the time, Even after reminding, still we cannot practice because you know, the urge to practice doesn't come from within so strongly, you know. So we have to be kind of encouraged. We have to be reminded all the time. And so therefore, yeah. So in order to generate or cultivate that uncontrived desire to take the essence from your life, you know, then one should meditate on topic of freedom and endowment, precious human rebirth. Then one should meditate on precious human rebirth. Once we meditate on precious human rebirth, one will realize how precious it is, how meaningful it is, how then, you know, you don't want to waste it. Then feeling, you don't, once you see you feel the value of our precious life, the value and preciousness of life, then you want to make sure that you don't waste that incredible, precious life, incredible, valuable life, you know. And when you have this feeling, you don't want to waste, then of course you want to make it meaningful and take essence from it, you know, so that will come. And once you have that feeling, then to practice the Dharma would come very easily from within yourself, you know. And so therefore, one to do that, to have that kind of feeling, then we need to continue to meditate on, you know, the precious human life, you know, which has 18 qualities, you know, 8 freedom and 10 endowments. And the preciousness, how rare it is to obtain again, and yeah. And how precious it is in terms of actualizing the, you know, temporary happiness and ultimate happiness, all of that. Then if you endeavor, if you put effort for things of this life is not inverted, a serious endeavor of future life will not arise, you know, unless we give up, unless we are able to let go of attachment to this life. If we cannot give up attachment to this life, then, you know, the serious kind of feeling or wish to work for the benefit of future life will not arise as easily, you know, because all our life will be focused, distracted and focused on trying to accomplish of this life, you know, and we cannot think more than that. Even though we can talk about future life, but it's just become a word. It doesn't really come from a heart, you know. And so in order to that, then we have to let go of being strongly attached to the activities of this life or the experience of just this life, you know. And so therefore, in order to let go of the attachment to this life so that we can have inspirations for the happiness of future life or well-being of future life, then we should meditate on impermanence, you know, impermanence in general and especially death impermanence, you know. So trying to meditate on impermanence in general and especially death impermanence. The fact that the body you have obtained will not last long, you know, that this life that we have obtained, you know, is only a matter of time before it comes to the end, and that we have to leave it behind, you know. So-called the death comes, you know, we cannot escape the death as long as we're in samsara. And so meditating on death impermanence, especially meditating on how death could come anytime, any moment, how not only the death is sudden, but the time of death is so uncertain that it can come, it can manifest, we can face it any moment, any times. And so, you know, once we realize that, then we can let go of a lot of attachment in this life, you know. lot of time, for example, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that because I will be living 40 years and I need all these things for 40 years, During those 40 years, I will need this. I will need to save enough to last I will have to save enough to last for those 40 years. That means save enough if I have any kind of health problem in those 40 years, all the food, basic needs that I might need for those 40 years, all of that. So we don't have time to think because we are always thinking of all this. But once we know death could come any moment, any time, then, oh, if the death comes tomorrow, what is important for me? And then you started to think, oh, most important is to practice the Dharma. If the death is going to come tomorrow, nothing else is important. What is important is the Dharma. So then your mind towards the Dharma and the futures come strongly and more naturally, and so therefore that. And after the death, the way you will wander in the lower realms after the death, And after the death, from Buddhist point of view, is not the end. Your consciousness will continue, taking a new form of life. And then, there is possibility that we could take rebirth in the lower realms, depending on our practice, our actions in this life. And if we are born in the lower realms, then the suffering is much more intense than what we experience here now, and is much more intense. And also the practice to practice the Dharma become very limited. We can't say impossible, but it becomes extremely difficult to be on the path again. Become very extremely challenging, difficult to practice the Dharma and to on the path, And so at that time, a natural attitude of conscious fear will arise, So when you think about the possibility of taking a rebirth in the lower realms, and when you think of the suffering of the lower realms, then of course the fear will arise because nobody wants to experience such sufferings. Nobody wants to experience such sufferings, Nobody wants to experience such suffering. So therefore, kind of fear will arise, And when those fear arises, then so you should sincerely develop certainty about the excellent quality of true refuge, abide by the vows, common refuge, and train in the training. And when the fear arises, then we try to go in the refuge to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha by understanding the qualities of Buddha Dhamma Sangha. What can help us from taking a rebirth in the lower realm is the real refuge is the Dharma, our own practice. Okay. Who can help us from taking a rebirth in the lower realms? The real refuge that can protect us, help us, is the true Dharma. If we can practice Dharma, if we can actualize Dharma within ourselves, that is the actual refuge, And then that Dharma that has been taught by the Buddha, then we generate a strong. Once you have a strong convictions, faith, trust in the Dharma itself, then you will have naturally strong respect, faith to the Buddha who taught the path to you to actualize that Dharma within yourself. And then you also have a strong faith and respect to other Sangha who have actualized the Dharma within themselves, who are true practitioners, and who have developed Dharma within themselves. Then you have, and then you, with that understanding, then, we go in a strong refuge to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and then, having taken the refuge, then we try to keep the vows or the precepts of the going to the refuge as much as we can, and we train in that. Basically, So then training in the training in going to the refuge, and then trying to follow and live by the precept and the vows for after having taken the refuge and whatever other vows that we might have taken. Then you should develop from many angles the faith of convictions in actions and their effect, the foundations of all virtues dharma, you know. So nobody wants to suffer. Everyone wants happiness. Nobody wants to go to the lower realms. Nobody wants to experience those sufferings. Neither the suffering in our life, you know. But still we suffer. Why? Because we continue to engage into the cause that gives rise to the sufferings. You know, we continue to engage into non-virtuous actions because we continue to create non-virtuous actions. And we still struggle to have a happiness because we don't create enough cause of happiness, the virtues, because we don't engage into the enough cause of the virtues because of the happiness, the virtues. And the reason why we continue to not engage in the non-virtuous actions and why we continue to struggle to engage in the virtuous action all the time is because we don't have a deep, profound understanding of karma. The law of cause and effect. You know, if we have deep realization, understanding of karma, you know, we will never lie. But sometimes we lie. We think, oh, it's a small lie. It might not be too bad, you know. Oh, we would not kill a human beings, but maybe we might smash one of the small, you know, when mosquito is bothering you, or sometimes small ants, you know, kind of really bother you, you know, really make you very painful, and you might just go like that, you know. And we think, oh, it's not too bad, isn't it? I didn't kill a human beings. It's just an insect. It's not as bad. And that, all of those things, so many other things we do in our everyday life, if we really deeply understand the functioning of karma, law of cause, we will be very fearful of engaging in such behavior and actions. We will be 10 times, 100 times more careful, more conscious, more careful. And so, at the moment, because even though we have some belief in, you know, some belief, little conviction in law of cause and effect, but we don't have really strong, deep, profound conviction in that. Sometimes we think like we believe, but sometimes when it comes to certain situation, then our belief is shaken. Do you get it? Our conviction is shaken. How often we feel that way, you know? When things are going well, we feel, oh, I can accept karma. Karma makes sense. Law of cause makes just sense. We seem to have faith. We seem to have convictions. And when things started to go wrong in our life, around us, then our faith is shaken. Our conviction is shaken. You know? Then we think, oh, I'm not sure whether that is the karma. That's the function of karma. You know? And because, again, so in order to have total unshakable, unmovable, unreversible conviction, then we have to meditate more and more on the karma, law of cause and effect, because that is the foundation of all the virtues. Everything starts from that. Everything starts from that, Then having made it firm, having made it firm, that conviction, faith in karma. Once you have a strong, firm, unshakable conviction and faith in that, then you should try to engage in virtues and counteract non-virtues, always enter the path of four powers. So therefore, then once you have total convictions, firm convictions, then engaging the virtues become easier. Refrain from non-virtues become easier. Become easier. So we try to not engage in any kind of non-virtuous action. We try to engage in the virtuous actions. And for whatever non-virtuous action, negative karma that we have already created in the past, knowingly, unknowingly, we try to purify that by using four opponent powers. Okay? So there's two steps. When you have a total convictions, firm or total conviction of faith in karma, immediately what you do is trying to not to engage in any non-virtuous actions, engage in the virtuous actions. So that will be the step that we take it for the futures. But what about the non-virtuous and negative karma we have already created in the past? What to do with that? And there is a solution to that. The Buddha has taught a way to purify them. And so the way to purify is by applying the four opponent powers. And so through that, then we purify that. And through that, up to here, through that practice, then we have meditated or contemplated on the practice of small scope. Okay, up to here. Once you have thus garnered the Dharma cycle of person with small capacity, and then after that, then you should try to meditate on a general disadvantage, general faults, and the problem and suffering of the samsara in general, and specific suffering of those individual realms. Okay, so we try to meditate on general disadvantage of being in samsara, general fault of being in samsara, the general suffering of being in samsara, and specifically different specific suffering of different realms within the samsaric realms, the suffering of three lower realms, the suffering of three higher realms, individual sufferings. So we try to meditate on that more and more, and through that kind of meditations, by meditating on that, then we started to feel less and less attached to samsara and samsaric experiences. And we are able to kind of become more and more disenchanted to the samsara and become more enchanted towards the liberation, nirvana. The wish to achieve the nirvana, the wish to liberate from the samsara, then come more naturally, more strongly, when you have been meditating on the force of samsara, and when you have deep understanding on that. And once you have understand this, once you have the strong wish to free from the samsara, so if you want to free from the samsara, then you have to identify what is the cause. Because if you want to free from the samsara, you have to eliminate the cause that lead us or keep us in the samsara, If you cannot get rid of the cause that keep us in samsara, even if you want to get free from the samsara, you cannot get it because still you are creating the cause and condition there to be in samsara. And so therefore that is then identifying the cause from which cyclic exists arise. And the cause of keeping us in samsara is the karma and afflictive emotions. Karma, contaminated karma, and especially the afflictive emotions. That also lead us to create those negative, the contaminated karma. And through that, develop an uncontrollable desire to abandon them. And then, strong wish to, no matter what happens, I'm not going to create any more contaminated karma. I'm not going to engage into any kind of I'm not going to give any opportunity for afflictive emotion to arise. And by applying whatever different antidote, different meditations, then we try to reduce and abandon completely. And the way to abandon them, the way to abandon the contaminated karma and the delusions, the cause of the samsara, is by applying the path. By applying the path. And that is the three higher training. The higher training of moral discipline, meditative concentration, and the wisdom. Okay. And while we are training that, particularly in the vows of individual liberation, which you yourself have undertaken, and then trying to live, trying to keep whatever vows we have taken, refuge vows, layperson vows, how much even layperson vows that you have taken for ordination, for ordained beings, there are different level of ordained vows, then you try to keep them, that is the very importance. And so that's up to here. Then we have, once you have thus garnered the cycle of training of personal medium capacity up to here, then we meditate on the practice of medium capacity. And then, next, just as we are suffering in the samsara, as long as we're in samsara, we have continued to suffer in the past, we continue to suffer now, and we will continue to suffer as long as we're in samsara. And there's no free from the suffering as long as we're in samsara. With that understanding, then again, I'm the not only one. All sentient beings who are in samsara, they are no different from me. They are also experiencing suffering like just myself. They have also experienced suffering in the past. They are suffering now, and they will continue to suffer in the future as long as they're in samsara. So with that understanding, then you try to develop, bodhicitta that is rooted in loving kindness and compassions. With that understanding, you try to feel their pain and suffering and cultivate a strong wish to free them from the suffering and the cause of suffering. So you cultivate the compassions, and then you develop a strong wish to lead them to happiness and cause of happiness. The wish to see them and, see them in happiness and cause of happiness, and wish to lead them wish to lead them or guide them to the happiness and cause of happiness. That loving kindness, and based on the root of that loving kindness and compassion, then you cultivate the bodhicitta mind in order to free them from suffering and cause of suffering, in order to lead them to true happiness, cause of happiness. I must achieve fully enlightenment. Without achieving fully enlightenment, I can help, but the help I can do will be extremely limited. Extremely limited, Even the bodhisattva, even the arhat who are free from all the delusions, still the help they can do to sentient beings is very limited. Even the great bodhisattvas who have developed the wisdom, who have developed the compassion, bodhicitta, still they are able to help sentient beings much more than we can, but still very limited. And so if we want to help limitlessly to all sentient beings, then we must be fully enlightened. We must achieve that fully enlightened state. And therefore, the wish to achieve that fully enlightened state in order to be the greatest help and benefit to each and every sentient being without any limitations. And so that wish to achieve enlightenment is the bodhicitta, you know. And so here is that you need to try as hard as you can to arise it. So because that is the bodhicitta is the very root of the Mahayana teachings and Mahayana practice. It is the very entrance. It is like the gateway to the Mahayana path. Okay, the bodhicitta is the gateway to the Mahayana path. Therefore, we have to try as much as possible to cultivate and generate that bodhicitta mind as much as possible, you know. Then once we have generated bodhicitta mind, then it says, without the bodhicitta mind, then six perfection, two states, so forth are like a roof without foundations, okay? Without bodhicitta mind, even you try to engage in the practice of generosity, moral discipline, patience, joyous effort, meditative concentrations, wisdom, and even you try to engage in the highest yoga tantra, such as generation stage, completion stage, all those practice will not be effective and strong because it will be like a roof without foundations. It can collapse anytime, you know. Without good foundations, you know, small wind can blow it up, the roof, you know. And so you need a strong foundations, and that is the where, again, these are the really, you know, we have to really kind of take those teachings to bear our heart. Sometime we always become, even when we come to spiritual, we still have materialistic attitude, even in spiritual. We want to collect more and more, you know, even in spiritual. Oh, I want more initiation, more empowerment. I want better, higher initiations, higher practice, instead of working on trying to develop strong foundations. Go steady, trying to build good foundations, and then slowly, steady, then it will be, no matter how much wind it comes, it will not be able to blow up the roof because you have strong foundations. Then you will be, stable. Otherwise, I often see, you know, students who rush, everything's so excited when they first find the path. They're excited and they want to have everything. They run and rush, and then after some time, you know, they lose the path, completely lose the path. And they lose the path because they didn't build up good foundations. They didn't have good foundation. Later, their mind is disturbed by many things, and they couldn't make sense of all those things. And they are unable to make sense of all these things because they didn't have good foundations. If they have strong foundations, good foundations, then that wouldn't be a problem, you know. That wouldn't be a problem or affect them, you know. So then after we have tried to meditate on bodhicitta, you know, as much as possible, you know, when you have had some little experience. So even though we don't have, you know, effortless bodhicitta mind at the moment, you know, even though we haven't been able to develop effortless bodhicitta realizations, real spontaneous experience, but maybe we might start to have little experience. We understand what bodhicitta is, and we have meditated on that. And when we put effort, we feel it. We have little experience, even though it is not effortless, even though it is not spontaneous and natural, but we started to really feel strongly. And when we have that small experience, then you should assume it through the ritual and put effort into training so that you can make an aspiring bodhicitta as stable as you can. Then you try to take the aspiring bodhicitta precept. You know, once you have little experience of bodhicitta mind, in order to stabilize that bodhicitta mind, so that you can maintain that aspiring bodhicitta, so you don't deteriorate, so you can maintain it, So then we try to take aspiring bodhicitta precept. And when you take the aspiring bodhicitta precept, then it requires some kind of ceremony. So the ritual here means some kind of ceremony, through that ceremony at the very beginning, when you take it, if possible, then you try to take from a qualified master who have that, who can, so that is what it. And then after that, you try to again study and practice here. Then here means studying, practicing, studying, learning and studying about the great ways of bodhisattva contact, the bodhisattva activities. You try to practice of those bodhisattva activities, and as you get to know the boundary between what you should counteract and what you should engage in, generate a desire to train in it. Once you have understanding of, what is bodhisattva practice, what is not bodhisattva practice, and then with that, and then you try to generate a strong wish to engage in bodhisattva activities, bodhisattva contact, bodhisattva practice, strong. And when that is arising, then, take the vows of engaging in bodhicitta through ritual ceremonies, then once, so after that, you try to practice, study the bodhisattva context, such as the six perfections, You study on six perfections, and then you strongly develop a strong wish that I want to engage in the practice of six perfections. And when you have strong this wish to engage in those six perfections, such as such six perfections, then you try to take the engaging bodhisattva precept, the vows, by relying on through, again, qualified teachers at the very beginning, with the qualified masters, by following particular ceremony. And then after you have taken that bodhisattva's vows, engaging, then training six perfections, to ripen your own mental continuum, and the four way of gathering disciples to ripen the mind stream of other sentient beings. So, again, the four means of gathering others, practicing the charities or generosity, and, giving them encouraging words, to practice the Dharma, to engage in the path, encouraging pleasant, nice things that will encourage them, that will inspire them, and then after that, then trying to lead them on the path, and the bodhisattva path, or the path, leading them to the path, and then practicing yourself the path you are trying to encourage them or trying to lead them, because if you don't practice yourself, then others will not follow it. Because when you see, if it's so good, why don't you practice yourself? You say it's good for me, but if it's so good as you explained to me, how come you don't practice that? So then, their mind, even you try to encourage them, it doesn't become encouragement. Even you try to inspire them, it doesn't become inspired. Instead, they might even have a more resistance to that. That is what a lot of people in the world have strong resistance to any kind of spiritual path, any kind of religious. There is a lot of fear, a lot of resistance, a lot of suspicious. And some people, they don't want to hear anything to do with any religious or spiritual path. They don't want to even hear, because they have seen so many times so-called those spiritual or religious practitioners, especially the leaders, they don't practice what they preach. They don't walk the talk. They don't practice what they preach. So that has made a lot of people strong aversions to that, And so therefore, it didn't inspire them. It actually, no matter what the nice word that teacher might have said, And so that is where it comes. Living by examples is the key to inspire others. to lead to the path. And in particular, risk your life to avoid a root downfall, you know. So we try to keep those vows, preserve them, keep them even in the course of our life. And so then, you know, not only we don't try to fall in the root downfall, but also we try hard not to taint it by small and medium contamination or mislead either, you know. So, you know, when one of the condition are not get there, you know, then it's not downfall, then it could be small. But when the few condition medium like that, you know, and then if you are try hard to restore your vows, and by somehow, you know, even after we try our best, because we are not mindful all the time, because our practice of mindfulness is not strong, because we are unenlightened, sometimes delusion is too strong, and so maybe sometimes we break the vows, you know, we dilute the vows. And when we dilute the vows, when we break the vows, then try to renew them as quick as possible. Try to renew them. The both sets of vows, unlike like the other vows, the both sets of vows, you can renew by yourself. So that is a good part, you know. You can renew by yourself every day. Yours, if you want to renew, you can renew every day, you know, regardless of whether you have broken or not. Sometimes even we are broken, sometimes we are not even aware. So it's better to renew it, you know. And so anyway, yeah. And then you need to train in last two perfection, in particular, the shamatha and the wisdom. And then the next one, I don't know. Maybe we can, I don't know, shall we leave this for next time? When is the next week? I don't know. Most people might be busy. Christmas, busy. It's the 22nd. If most are not busy, then we could continue, leave this part, and then the little bit of tantric part. Probably we might be able to finish maybe a little bit earlier next time, or maybe same time. So maybe, yeah, next week. So okay, thank you very much again. So we do the dedications. Gyawadi nyodo da lama sangye du gyone doa chi kyamale pa te sala kwe parasho. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that has not arise and grow, and may that which is arise and not diminish but increase more and more. Jigden kamde pende malu ba kangle chungwe sambe ishe no katin chungme tenzin gyatso la sowa deso tuje lunjo sho. You who upholds the supreme moral way, who serve as a wonderful barrier of all sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayer, honoring the three jewels, Savior myself and other your disciple, please live long. Venerable One, to you whose kindness exists, that of all conqueror for those wanderers in the far off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us in intentionally descending again into a family of far distant land, we make this request, O Lama, please live long. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night, and thank you again, Bob, for helping throughout all this year for the discussions, and I also you have been helping with other basic program. Thank you. Okay.